Yeah, I'm still not getting used to all of this. So, I want to say thank you to Griffin Sherry. Just what a spectacular performance. The Ballad of the 20th Maine is one of my favorite songs, and I was very, very lucky to be able to sing it next to him at a Hearts of Pine game about 3 weeks ago. And but it was wonderful to be able to hear it again here tonight. And then also, let's give a round of applause for my mother. I am very fortunate to have the parents that I have. They imbued in me the values that I hold today. And even though throughout my life I've faced struggles and challenges, they have been there every step of the way. And I would not be able to be here today without my mom and my dad and my brother. And I just want to say thank you for that. It's been a hell of a week, or weekend, I should say. I went from being a communist on Thursday to a Nazi on Monday, which is, if anybody's done any of the reading, that's a rather hard political trajectory to navigate. I do want to just be upfront about this. When I was 23 years old, I got a skull and crossbones tattoo in Split, Croatia, when I was on liberty with my Marine buddies who I fought in Fallujah and Ramadi with. We got the tattoo, and we then lived our lives until now, and just thought I had a skull and crossbones tattoo. Until over the weekend or late last week when I started getting asked questions about if I had a hidden Nazi tattoo. And I was, of course, I laughed at it because I thought that was the dumbest thing I'd heard. And then somebody showed me a picture of a motif that neo-Nazis use, and it's a skull and crossbones. They're pretty popular amongst military units, but they definitely had a lot in common. And I then went and got it covered because I do not want something on my body that represents in any way the antithesis of my politics. I grew up as a little punk rock kid listening to the Dead Kennedys and the Dropkick Murphys, and I will say that hating and fighting Nazis has been a big part of who I see myself for my entire life. And I still, to this day, there are things in my past that I'm not proud of. However, my continued disgust at racism, at anti-Semitism, at Nazism, of course, that has been a constant throughout my life, and that still today anchors much of my politics. Fascism is a cancer, and it is something that has no place in American politics. And now I would like get back to talking about wealth inequality and Medicare for all, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So as my mother mentioned, I was born and raised in Hancock County. I was born in Blue Hill, grew up in Ellsworth and Sullivan. I went to high school in Bangor at John Baptist Memorial High School, fantastic place. And then after that, I joined the Marine Corps. And I did multiple tours in the Marine Corps. I was in the infantry, I was a machine gunner. After that, I switched to the United States Army, where I was a long-range surveillance team leader and a rifle team and rifle squad leader. Went to Afghanistan in 2010, 2011 with the Army. I did 4 deployments in the military, in the infantry. I got out of the Army in 2012, began going to college in Washington, D.C. I did not finish. I'm about 16 to 20 credits shy of a degree in history. But the oysters on my farm don't care, so I'm not going back to finish it. The reason I didn't finish is because I struggled immensely. I got back from my 4th deployment, and I really had no idea how to think about what I had gone through. I was very disillusioned with the wars that I had taken part in. I was also suffering, unsurprisingly, from PTSD, and I had a number of herniated discs, and my knees are bad. The infantry is not easy on your body, not in combat anyways. And I was in a pretty dark place for a long time. Those were the years that I was trying to go to college. And by 2016, I realized that I needed to leave, and I needed to go somewhere, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where I fit in society. I was deeply alone, very alienated and isolated. And I actually came up to Maine in the summer, and I hadn't been back to Maine in the summer in years. I always came home for Christmas and things like that, but it had been a long time. I came to Maine with a friend of mine from DC. We were standing in Sullivan, Maine, looking out across the bay at MDI, and my friend looks at me and she says, "So this is where you're from?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "So this feels like home to you when you're here?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Why do you live in Washington, D.C.?" And I didn't have a good answer. And when I went back down to Washington for a few weeks and realized that while I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and I didn't know where I was supposed to fit in, it seemed like Maine was the place for me to go back to. Sorry. My mom got me all emotional, and now I'm in trouble. Gonna have a musky moment. Some people got that joke. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. At that point, I decided that I didn't know what was gonna happen, but Maine was the place where I was gonna figure it out. And I came back, still tried to figure out what I was gonna do. I had no idea. I had always seen myself as a soldier. I didn't know what to do besides that. It was the only thing I felt like I was ever good at. And so I wound up going back to Afghanistan for about 6 months in 2018, working for the State Department as a security contractor on the ambassador's security detail. And that was when whatever disillusionment I had became something much deeper. I had not been in Afghanistan in 7 years. And I was back in Kabul around the higher echelons, listening to conversations, and I realized that nobody knew what they were doing. 7 years after I'd been fighting in the mountains, and here we were with the same stupid strategies, the same stupid ideas, stuff that did not work and wasn't going to work. And I quit that job, and I moved back to Sullivan, Maine, and I bought a 19-foot Seaway skiff with a 75-horse Honda on the back, and I became an oyster farmer. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've been doing that ever since. And it has allowed me to build, quite frankly, a life that I could never have dreamed of. A life of fulfillment, a life of joy, a life of love, a life that is very much rooted in my community. I became the harbor master. I've been the chair of the planning board for a number of years. All the things that I didn't know what I was looking for, for years, this isolation, this alienation, this angst, this anger, it all went away. And it all went away because I got to reconnect with real life. And I got to reconnect with the community that I was from, that welcomed me back, neighbors that welcomed me back. I got to fall in love. I got to meet my wife, Amy. I got to get married. And all of that was happening to me. I was feeling my life getting better. I was getting the sense of grounding and place. And as it was happening, I was watching friends of mine struggle in really intense ways. I was watching the same work that I remember people doing when I was a kid that used to be enough to keep a roof over your head, that used to be enough to have you have access to health care. It used to be enough to afford a decent life and raise a family. I was watching that hard work, that seasonal work, multiple jobs, the kind of hardscrabble existence Mainers pride themselves in, I was watching that not be enough anymore. And I began to really wonder why that was. Why is it that when I was a kid, I knew guys who were clam diggers who put their kids through college? I knew people who used to stern in the summer on a boat, plow driveways in the winter, do arborist work, make wreaths. That used to be enough to raise a family, and it isn't anymore. But Mainers didn't stop working hard. Mainers still work exactly as hard as they always have. I refuse to believe that the people of Sullivan, Maine stopped working hard. And they didn't stop working hard. What happened was that we have a system that has been built to make sure that that hard work does not pay off for them. When I was born in Blue Hill, back when you could do that, there were something like 6 birthing centers in eastern Maine. We have 2 now. The only independent one closed over the summer. Now all the birthing centers are owned by Northern Light, a consolidated company that owns all the hospitals. I was born in 1984. That was not that long ago. The idea that we have less now as a society makes no sense to me. The idea that people used to be able to work hard and have access to the goods and the services that they required to live dignified lives, it wasn't long ago that we still had some of that. And it's all gone now. In 1990, there were fewer than 100 billionaires in the United States. Today, there are over 800. That money went somewhere, and everybody in the state of Maine knows where it went. I don't care if you voted for Donald Trump, if you voted for Kamala Harris, if you didn't vote. You go around the state right now, you go ask any working person, do you think you live in an economic and political system that is built with your interests at heart? Nobody says yes. Everybody knows that they're being robbed. Mainers know in their bones that they are being robbed blind. And they know it because they can see it. They can see it in a for-profit healthcare system that buries them in nonsense about co-pays, in-network and out-of-network and premiums. They can see it in the rising price of goods and services we all need while wages remain stagnant for years on end. They can see it in the fact that housing in this state is becoming unaffordable for people my age and younger. They can look around and what they see is not a broken system. We often talk about it like it is, but I'm going to tell you the system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it is intended to. It is a system that has been built by establishment politicians via policy to get the outcomes that we have today. It is built to fleece working Americans and put their labor, their time, and their wealth into the pockets and the bank accounts of big money, of hedge funds, of private equity, of Silicon Valley tech companies, of Wall Street. That's what this system is built to do, and it is working perfectly. The thing is, it's just not working perfectly for us, because it wasn't built for us, because it wasn't built by us. And it is time to change that. The world that we live in today is not natural. We do not live in a political and economic reality that is organic. It is a system that is built by policy decisions. Policy that is written by establishment politicians in Washington, D.C. at the behest of their donors and their supporters. And it is a system that was made to make sure that no matter how hard you work, you will never feel like you have power. You will never feel like you live in a system that is accessible to you. I'm going to ask, who here thinks that American politics is something that actually cares about them? Who thinks that American politics is accessible to the average American, that it responds to the needs of the average American? Nobody believes this. And we don't believe it because it isn't true. And we're sick and tired of people lying to us and telling us that it's all okay. Telling us that this is a system that we can't do anything to change. It's just like this. Power's hard to get. Power's for these people, and they're up there, they're qualified. They have the pedigree. They have the background. They're the ones that are allowed to make decisions for us. Don't worry ourselves. Let them take care of it. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, that story is bullshit. And the reason that I know that it is because American history tells us that it is. If you look at American history, if you look at all the good things that we got, you are not going to find things that were created by those in power. We did not get an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week because somebody wrote a nice letter to their congressman. We got it because working people organized and built power. And they used that power to fight for what they needed in the streets, in the hills, and in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. We didn't get the Civil Rights Act because LBJ woke up one day and thought it was a nice thing to have. We got it because decades of work were put in by organizers and activists across the country. People who put their lives on the line. People who sacrificed themselves for what they knew was necessary. So when the day came, they could put pressure up against the system. And that got us the Civil Rights Act, which is one of the best things we ever did to move towards justice and equality in this country. We have legacies that show us the way forward. We have the legacy of the labor movement. We have the legacy of the suffragette movement. We have the legacy of the civil rights movement, of the disability rights movement, of the gender equality movement. And none of these are legacies of asking permission. These are also the legacies of the Democratic Party that I thought I joined. These are the legacies of the Democratic Party that would exist if it was run by the Democrats that are in it. When I go around the state of Maine, I don't meet Democrats in county committees. I don't meet Democrats who are state legislators. I don't meet Democrats who are just in the party existing. I don't meet any of them who think that it's a good idea to let the ultra-wealthy steal more money. I don't meet Democrats who think it's a good idea to send young men and women off to fight in the same kinds of stupid wars I had to fight in. If the party was made up of Democrats, if the party was run by the people that were in it, it would be the party we want it to be. But the shameful truth is that it isn't. And this is where the hard work comes in. Nobody is coming to save us. No one is coming down from on high, out of the halls of power, to give us what we need. We need to reconnect with our legacies, and we need to learn how to build power again. We need to learn how to organize. We need to learn how to build trust in communication in our communities. And we need to then use that power to fight for what we deserve. But that is not going to happen as long as the establishment leadership of the Democratic Party remains part of the same corporate apparatus that the Republican Party is. Now, Susan Collins, this is the easy part. Susan Collins' charade has worn thin. Nobody believes that she cares about her constituents now. She's very concerned. The problem is that concern does not bring back a woman's right to choose. Weak condemnations don't reopen rural hospitals. Mainers of all electoral stripes now see her for what she is, which is just another self-interested politician who does things to stay in power so she can continue to serve her donors and the people that have access to her. She has enabled the destruction of our way of life over these last 30 years, and that is disqualifying in the role of United States Senator. Now, Maine deserves better than Susan Collins, but Maine also deserves an alternative who is not at risk of being beholden to the same corporate apparatus that she is. And so, unlike Susan Collins, I'm going to tell you exactly where I stand and exactly what I'm going to go fight for in Washington, D.C. I'm going to fight to protect and expand the Social Security that Mainers have paid into by removing the cap. I will fight corporate greed and price gouging, which is driving up the costs of all of our daily commodities while our wages have remained stagnant. And on that note, I'm going to fight for raising the federal minimum wage. We have paid for 3 foreign wars since the last time we raised it. And that was money, $4 trillion for Iraq and Afghanistan. Money that should have been spent here in the United States, because we should be using taxpayer money to build schools and hospitals in America and not bombs to drop on them in Gaza. I will fight for the PRO Act and to expand the rights of all American workers to organize, because every worker in this country should have the right to join a union. And I will stand in the way of every fascist attack on our democracy, because every single American deserves the right to the ballot. But there are two issues I want to talk about more in depth because these are very close to me. This is healthcare and housing. I have the unique luck of being a disabled combat veteran. I was lucky enough that in my combat tours, I got blown up enough times that the VA thinks I deserve health care. And that's a ridiculous statement to make. But it is the health care I get through the VA that has allowed me to build the life I have today. If I didn't have VA health care, I would not have been able to move back to Sullivan, Maine. I would not have been able to start an oyster farm. I would not have been able to become a diver because I love diving and I love the sea, and I've been able to somehow convince people to pay me for it. I would not have been able to take these risks or put this time in if I was trying to find health care. The VA gives me all the health care I need, and I don't have to think about it. And I often think what Eastern Maine would look like if my creative, hardworking neighbors didn't have to think about premiums or co-pays or in-network or out-of-network. Because it isn't just about the money. It's about the time. It's about the energy. It's about the anxiety that working people have to sink into wondering how they're gonna pay for the health care they require for them and their families. What kind of businesses would we have? What kind of art would be created? What kind of books would be written if people had more time and had to dedicate less energy to just surviving? Healthcare is a human right, and we need to treat it as such. It is what allowed me to build the life I have today, and I don't think the bar to that kind of foundational support should have to be going and fighting in stupid foreign wars like I had to. That is something that should be available to every single American. And that is why I am going to fight for Medicare for all. I also get support from the VA every month that allows me to pay my mortgage. And that's why I have a roof over my head that I don't think about. I get to own my house, and I don't have to worry about where I get to sleep or what my future looks like or if my rent's gonna go up. I get that stability because of the support I get from the VA. Housing is also a human right. And we need to have a system that treats it like that and not like a system built around making money for BlackRock or private equity. In the time that we have watched the prices of single-family homes in this country go through the roof, we have also watched private equity and hedge funds buying up those same homes. That needs to be illegal. And I don't care if you're a Republican or an independent or a Democrat, these are issues that impact every single Mainer. It doesn't matter who you voted for when the hospital closes. It doesn't matter what the letter is next to your name when you don't know how you're gonna buy a house. These are material needs that every single working person in the state requires. And we need to re-engage with a politics that thinks that is true, that looks at the material needs of everyday working Americans and centers those. And it doesn't matter about partisanship. It doesn't matter about which side you think you're on. You're on the same side. The reason I am holding these town halls across the state of Maine is that is the message I want to convey. I want us to realize that down here in the real world, they get us all pointing fingers left and right when we need to be pointing fingers in one direction, and that is up. I'm also holding these town halls. In fact, now I think we've held 25 more town halls than Susan Collins has since Bill Clinton was president. I'm holding these town halls because not that long ago, I was still a normal working Mainer. And if I wanted to go talk to my senator, they were gonna have to come to Ellsworth, Maine in the evenings or on the weekends so I could go down there and yell at them. And that's why I'm doing this. It is important to go out into the community and talk to your constituents. Working people in Maine don't have the money to go buy a fancy plate at a fundraiser. They don't have the time in a workday to drive to Lewiston or Augusta and talk to some intern in an office. A United States Senator needs to be accessible to the working people of Maine. The only way that you do that is by going out into the community and talking to working people where they live. And so that's exactly what I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to be back. This is not my last time in Ogunquit. I've held town halls from here to Madawaska, from Rumford to Calais. I'm going all over the state, and I'm going to keep going all over the state. And when we can't have town halls, I'm going to knock on people's doors, and I'm going to talk to them. Because the only way that you can connect with the needs of the people of Maine is to talk to the people of Maine. And when this is done, and I go to Washington as the next senator from the state of Maine, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep coming back out and making myself accessible. Because I firmly believe that the reason we are in the straits we are today is that we have allowed hedge fund managers and corporate CEOs to have more access to senators than union leadership. We have private equity who has more of a chance of getting a meeting with the senator than somebody that works 2 jobs for a living. That is not the America I want to live in. And so I'm going to go and make sure that when I'm in office, I am accessible to people. And I want those folks. I want the hedge fund guy trying to find my phone number. But I want the nurses union to have me on speed dial. But tonight, I am not just asking you to vote for me. And I'm not just asking you to donate money to me, although that would please do. To get money out of politics in America requires raising an immense amount of money. It is an irony that is deeply frustrating, I will say. What I'm really here to ask you to do is to show up. I'm asking you to put some skin in the game. Because I cannot do this alone. Even when I win, I will be the junior senator from the state of Maine, maybe in the minority. That does not come with a lot of structural power. We need to build something else. We need to build something deeper. We need to build real power, not fake power, not power that looks like buildings and has fancy titles next to it, but the power of organized people, the power of organized workplaces, the power of organized communities, because that is where power actually resides. There is a story in this country that we are told that power is only for a certain few, but it isn't. Power is for those who are willing to organize and to take it. It is that simple. And we, the people of Maine, we are the answer to our own struggles. We are the ones who can build power and fight for ourselves. And we don't have to rely on any establishment politician to go do it. We have the ability and the opportunity to do it ourselves, and that work starts right now. And when we have done this, when we have beaten back fascism, when we have protected our democracy, when we have saved our freedom, let it be a different kind of freedom. Not a romantic freedom of just protecting individual rights, but a freedom that is real, a material freedom. The freedom to not be ripped off by a for-profit healthcare system. The freedom to own the roof that is over your head. The freedom to watch your tax dollars go into programs that support you and your community, not funding somebody else's genocide. We need all of us on that wall. We need to have a freedom that gives us time to build, time to create, time to take risks, to start businesses, to make art, to fall in love, and to live lives not defined by struggle and scraping by, but lives of dignity and joy. That is the vision. This is the opportunity before us. It is going to take an immense amount of work. It is going to require discipline and time and commitment, and it's going to take discomfort. What we have to do next is going to be hard, but if we don't do it, we are going to lose, and we cannot lose. And because we have no choice, we are going to succeed. We are going to organize. We are going to build power. We are going to fight for a brighter future. We're going to win the primary. We're going to win the general. And we're going to show this entire country the way forward. Because as Maine goes, so goes the nation. Thank you all very much. And now it's my favorite part. It's question time. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to see anybody, but I think I can. So I'm going to do this in I like the haphazard fashion. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and I will point at you. Yes, sir.
So like over the past week, obviously, I've seen articles from mainstream media or like legacy media where they haven't talked about you before at all, but now, I mean, I don't want to make a connection, but after Janet Mills started running, you know, and it's kind of been, you know, without saying, I feel like I don't need to say anything. Everyone knows what I mean, but your thoughts.
When my wife and I decided to do this, we had a really hard conversation because we knew that what we are embarking on is going to destroy our lives. We knew that what we are trying to do, what we want to build, what we believe in, is antithetical to the system as it currently stands. And that the system was going to do everything it could to crush us. And we knew that when we thought that this was like a flash in the pan attempt at like doing something good. And then it blew up. And then I just waited for the day, because I knew the day was coming when the machine was going to turn on and my life was going to get turned upside down. And that day came last Wednesday. It has remained since. I'm not going to minimize what has come out. I am not today who I always have been. I used to hold different opinions. I used to use different language. I said things and believed things that today I find abhorrent. I also grew. I met new people. I learned of other people's experiences. I realized that my experiences were my own, and they colored my opinions and where I was. And that the more open I could be to listening to other people's stories, the more open I was willing to be to extend compassion and empathy to others, the more I realized that many of those stories and beliefs that I had were wrong. And I changed them. And it was through that journey that I became who I am today. And I will say this, I am ashamed of things I once said, but I am not ashamed of who I am today. So I don't want to minimize this, but I will just say, the machine is turned on because it is scared. The machine has been turned on because they feel threatened. The amount of money and time it takes to dig through somebody's entire past who has not lived a very public life is extensive. And yet they are willing to expend those resources. They're not trying to organize people. They're trying to destroy my life. They're not trying to get out there and talk about issues. They're trying to figure out if I said something stupid on the internet 13 years ago. The establishment is spooked. And I'll say this, if they thought that this was going to scare me off, if they thought that ripping my life to pieces, trying to destroy it, was going to make me think that I shouldn't undertake this project, they clearly have not spent a lot of time around Marines. Yes, ma'am, in the blue. There'll be a mic coming.
So you've talked a little bit about how housing is becoming inaccessible, healthcare, et cetera. And I think the next thing that our country has began coming for is public education.
Yes.
And I think we're seeing that in defunding of public education and tax dollars being funded into private education for wealthy families. So I just wanted to hear you talk about how, we're kind of privileged in Maine that we have better public education access here. But how are you going to protect that for our Mainers and for our country? Because all students in our country deserve a good education.
My wife, Amy, was a public school teacher for 15 years. She actually... Also, just on this note, teachers, nurses, these are people you should thank for their service when you talk to them. As someone As someone who gets thanked for my service all the time, I think it is much more fitting to thank a teacher for theirs. So I just want to point that out. The right to a good education is one that every single American deserves. The Department of Education should not be cut or gutted, it should be expanded. The resources and wealth that this country has should be utilized to expand education. It should be utilized to make sure that we are taking care of not just K through end of high school, but childcare and higher education. Much of these crises that we are currently facing, education, housing, healthcare, all of these are crises that are going to require huge amounts of investment and political will if we are going to get through them. The days of playing around in the margins are over. The days of block grants and tax credits and weird little figuring out how to change the language of an existing law, that is done. If I am any kind of Democrat, I'm a New Deal Democrat. When I look at the things that this country built that made the lives of working Americans better, they are large projects, courageous things, large structural change that requires an immense amount of political will and investment to make happen. So whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's fighting climate change, whether it's getting us off fossil fuels, all of these things are going to require a different kind of politics than the one that we have had recently. In the end, you get what you pay for. We stopped funding public education. We stopped listening to teachers. We started wasting time bringing in consultants and outside groups to tell us that this would work. If we had just listened to teachers, paid them what they are worth, and funded schools, we would not be in the problem that we're in now. In the back there.
Along with education, how do you plan to teach the next generation how to not follow the misinformation out there and really come out here and support? Like, I wish there were so many people my age out here. Like, I see a couple of you youngers, but we need more people out here my age and supporting you.
You know, it's been funny being involved in politics in Maine for a few years. Every time I go to meetings, people are always like, where are all the young people? And that oftentimes turns into like a lament. You hear it often where young people are apathetic, or young people don't care about politics. And I don't think that's true. I think young people are disillusioned. I often think about this. If you're born after 9/11, what have you ever seen government do that was good? It isn't apathy. It is the fact that they just see it as something that will never be able to respond to their needs. And they're not wrong. That feeling makes perfect sense to me. I mean, in many ways, that's what animates my anger and animates this project. Because it is a politics that doesn't seem like it wants to be responsive. That's why we have to force it to be responsive. And like the misinformation, I don't have good answers here. I mean, truthfully, we are living in a media and information sphere that is run by the richest people on earth. They have an immense amount of power. As many of us have probably learned, there are no magic words to type on Facebook or Instagram that convince people to not believe nonsense. We've probably all tried. God knows I have. The thing is you cannot force people to do that. the issue that we are living, and like, it's a power issue. Right now, people with immense amounts of power control the information space. And that's it. The only option we have is to take that away from them. But the only way that we do that is by starting building power here amongst real people on the ground. And I'm not going to tell you this is going to be easy. I know, I always hear this. People are like, don't ask too much of voters. They'll be spooked. I'm here to ask everything. Building power, local organizing, this is where all of this starts. It's going to begin in face-to-face relationships. It's going to begin in building trust with people in the real world, and that requires time and energy. Anybody in this room who's ever organized before, you know that organizing is fundamentally difficult. You have to go out into your community and you have to tell your neighbors what you believe. And that is hard. And then you have to talk to them, knowing that you disagree with them on a myriad of issues, but you still have to go back at it, trying to find those places of common ground. And you have to remain empathetic and compassionate the entire time, even when faced with words and information that you find abhorrent. It is hard. And it's the only thing that we can do. It is the only way forward. We have to do it. Because for us to get young people to believe again, we have to show young people that politics is not about congressmen and senators. It's not about TV ads and races. Politics is about building power with your neighbors. Politics is about protecting your community. Politics is about being friends with people who you do not agree with. That is politics. That is real politics. And until we do that, we are not going to just convince people by telling them that they need to read a different news source. Not in a world where people are being bombarded with nonsense all day long. That's something we have to fight in a much longer and deeper way. And right now, we don't have the power to fight it, but we need to build it. And I will just say this. We will be able to fight them. There are a lot, even now, of excellent United States senators who are working on projects around this, on building better regulation. But we need more. And that's the issue. But the only way we get more is by electing people that want to do more. And then we also need to build power to make sure that when we elect them, we have something robust to keep them accountable. And we have something that we can leverage to make sure that other members, other representatives of ours who might not be on board with what we want, that we have the power to make them get on board. That's what we have to build. And I think if we do that, I'll be honest, I see a lot more young faces at these events than I do at any other political event I go to. And I think the reason is young people are angry, and I'm also angry. And they want to do something about it. Right here.
So, given your age, your geography, what you do for a living, where you've been in your life, one would think that maybe your message and your anger and your vision, resonate across what are now considered political divides. And I think that's maybe the greatest promise in my mind that you might bring to creating a new kind of party, a new kind of vision. How are you feeling? Is your message resonating with people who might not be part of the Democratic Party? And we're in a really, really disruptive time right now, right? And we're not going to rebuild the party that it was. It's got to be something really, really different.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that?
As I've been holding these town halls, I've been amazed at how many Republicans and independents show up to them. And we have good conversations. People come up to me in line afterwards. You know, like living in Sullivan, a lot of my friends and neighbors do not have my politics. They're still my friends. We still talk. And what has always been amazing to me is as I talk to them, when I talk about economic issues, we are always in agreement. You know, many people voted for Donald Trump because he told them that the one thing they knew was true, and that was that they were getting robbed, that the system was screwing them. Now, he blamed all the wrong people. He's got obviously no policy answers to this stuff. We all knew it was nonsense. But the truth is I understand why people voted for that. I understand why people see this system and think, I just want to burn it all down. We need to be able to speak to that anger and that angst and that anti-establishment feeling, but we need to do it with actual answers. And I've always felt like, this is my favorite one. It's removing the cap on Social Security. For years, people, I'm just going to explain this. From $1 to $167,000 of income, people pay into Social Security. You get taxed on it. It goes up in percentage as you make more money. Over $167,000, income above that doesn't get taxed. All the money above $167,000 a year, that if anybody makes, does not go into Social Security. If we removed the cap, we would fund Social Security forever and all time, and we would expand benefits. Now, I've actually had political people tell me not to talk about this because it's too complicated. I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's highly not complicated. When I tell that to my Trump voting friends, they literally say, how is that legal? Or why would we do it that way? Or that seems like it's only good for rich people. To which I answer, yeah. That's why Reagan did it. And Reagan did it. It's not even been around for a long time. It was put in the reforms of the 1980s. This is one of these things where when you talk to people about what's actually going on, and you use normal language, you don't just try to get into the weeds using all this kind of jargon, people aren't stupid. They might be misinformed, they might be propagandized, but they are not stupid. They understand that they're getting screwed. And we need to tell them that they are getting screwed. But they're not being screwed by immigrants. They're not being screwed by trans kids. They're not being screwed by gay people. They're being screwed by the same people that have been screwing us the entire time. And that is this class. That is the upper echelons, the rich, the ultra powerful, the corporate interests. They've been the ones screwing working people from the beginning, and they're screwing us yet again today. And I'll be honest, that message resonates with many of my Trump voting friends. And I have no illusions here that I'm going to go out and convince all Republicans in Maine to vote for me. We don't need all of them. The other thing is, it's in independence that I see an immense electoral opportunity. A lot of people in the state have become independents or unenrolled because they're disgusted, because they hate both the parties, because they think politics as it exists shouldn't. And I think my message speaks to that very deeply. And we are going to go out around the state, knocking on doors, talking to people, canvassing, opening offices, paying people to organize in their own communities to get the word out that what we are doing here isn't nonsense, that this is something different, that we are trying to build something real, and we are trying to tear it all down. But we're trying to tear it all down so we can build something good. That is what we are trying to do, and I think that message resonates across the partisan divide. All right, I have time for one more. I guess we'll go to you right here, sir. Yeah, we'll have the, you'll get a microphone in a second. Right there in the tan jacket. I think it's tan.
All right, so I have one question. I'm a libertarian. I think the system's broken. I do. So as you're looking to become a senator, which I dig it, I'm here, like I'm listening. Term limits.
Oh, yes. Oh, God, yes. So
30, 40, 50 years.
it's insane.
1 second. She brought me here. She's horrified that I'm speaking right now.
I thank you for coming. I mean, this is the. Term limits and getting money out of politics, I think, are two things that, until we fix them, we might continue finding ourselves back here in the same place. And when I talk about structural change, this is one of the things I'm talking about. We need to enact term limits. I've heard all the arguments for, I've heard all the arguments against. What I have seen in reality over the past 40 years tells me that we need this. I also think it needs to be part of a larger kind of democracy reform where we ban stock and bond trading by people in office. We absolutely need to pass a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United and get corporate money out of politics. To do these things is going to require electing people with the political will to accomplish it. Now, I know what I'm saying up here are just words. So, I'm very skeptical of politicians. So I realize that I'm up here saying, like, that's what I'm going to do. What I will say is, I have not lived a life in which I was trying to be a United States Senator. I have no interest in being wealthy. I frankly have very little interest in personal power. Until I was approached with this idea by some friends, who now I really question how friendly they really were, I had never once entertained this as a concept. My wife, Amy, and I were gonna run an oyster farm, and I was gonna be the harbor master until the day that I died in Sullivan, Maine. That was the life I wanted to live. That is still the life that I want to live. Honestly, it's a perfect life. It was a life that I'm still in a grieving process around realizing that I'm never gonna have that life back now. And that's okay. Sacrifices must be made. And if that's the sacrifice that's required of me, then I will bear it. I will say, though, that I do see it as a sacrifice. And so I'm not going to Washington to get rich. I fully intend to die in my house of old age in Sullivan, Maine. I fully intend. That's exactly. It definitely will. That is the life that I want to return to someday. I am undertaking this project because I believe in it. Because I think that we need to do this. And I know that I can say these words, and I hope that over the next year, the actions of myself in this campaign put truth to these words. But I'm just gonna ask you to have some faith in me, that is what I'm going down there to do. So. That was the last question I can take. I'm being motioned that I have to leave. Before I leave, one last thing. I have to beg you for money. I hate this part. We need to raise a lot of money. We've raised over $4 million at this point. We have We have 11,000 volunteers, which is a number that I still can't quite grasp. In order to organize those volunteers, we need money. Organizers cost money. Volunteer coordinators cost money. Canvassing training, organizing training, all of it costs money. I am not taking corporate PAC money. I'm not taking APAC money. We are relying on individual donations. And what I will just say is, if you have the ability to donate 10, 15, or 20 bucks a month on a recurring donation, that is incredibly helpful for us, because it allows us to see into the future. It allows us to know how much money we'll have on hand in a few months. We know we can make payroll. That allows us a lot of flexibility to go after other projects. And so I would ask that, while of course if you can donate the maximum, please do, that's great. I certainly don't know, I couldn't. But if you can donate 15 bucks a month for the next year, that means a lot to us. And I just want to ask you for that. And the last thing I'm going to ask you for, like I said earlier, the money's important, but your time is more important. Sign up as a volunteer. Join the campaign. Come learn how to organize. Come understand how to build power. And then take that training, take those skills and that confidence back into your community and work with the other groups that have been doing this same work for decades. Go find a community organization and join it. If you can, join a union. Find other groups that are dedicated to the same kind of power building that we are. And then we're all going to work together. And we're going to build a movement in the state of Maine that we have never seen. And we are going to show the rest of the country just what can be done when working people organize and fight for themselves. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.